Hello everyone, welcome to the Hyundai Tucson Hybrid. This is the 2022 model year, and as you can plainly see, we are looking at a radically different compact crossover than the generation that came before it. And there is quite a lot to be discussed with this new Tucson, including the wide variety of available engine and powertrain and really options that come with this new vehicle. But I'm going to very plainly state at the beginning that I think we're going to be looking at this vehicle as the compact crossover of the year, Canadian car of the year, whatever kind of metric you want to say of the year. This is a really standout vehicle, and there's a lot I want to share, so let's get on the road and properly talk about this new 2022 Tucson Hybrid. So the new Tucson, not only does it have an all-new exterior and interior design language, it is based on an all-new platform for Hyundai, and as it stands, we have 4 different variations of the Tucson in its first model year. We have the standard motor, the 2.5 litre engine with front or all-wheel drive. You have this hybrid version that comes standard with all-wheel drive, and a plug-in hybrid version is on its way. And then finally you have the N-line all-wheel drive model, which uses the 2.5 litre engine and is the performance designed variant of the Tucson. And there is a good enough suspicion that an N version of the Tucson will be coming along in the not too distant future. Where Hyundai is trying to go with this hybrid and quite a few of their other models is that this comes with more standard equipment to really help draw people into this world of hybridization. And I'm all for it. I love hybrids as day-to-day commuter vehicles because they take your regular boring commute, and if you want to make it a little more interesting, you can through the gamification of electrification. Won't go into depth too much about that, as I've really spoken at length with multiple hybrids in the past. So if you're stumbling onto my channel for the first time, then please do check out any of my other hybrid reviews. I'm sure I'll mention it there. So what do we have in this hybrid? We have a 1.6 litre turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, a 1.49 lithium-ion battery pack, and an electric motor that sits in between the engine and a 6-speed automatic transmission. Now, having a conventional transmission is quite uncommon in hybrids. CVTs have their place, and for good reason, but there's an interesting element when driving this vehicle with its 6-speed transmission that I don't think I've ever really felt in any other hybrid or plug-in hybrid vehicle. This Hyundai Tucson, first of all, feels quick. The combined power output is 226 horsepower and 258 pound-feet of torque, so off of the line, it's pretty nippy. But comparing it to its most direct rivals, I've noticed a few advantages with this hybrid system and a couple of drawbacks too. So first off, the advantage is I feel like this is a more capable, a more powerful hybrid system. So it's easier to get to higher speeds in this than what I've experienced in, let's say, the RAV4 Hybrid. I have on multiple occasions comfortably got to 40 or 45 kilometers an hour before the engine kicks in. I don't have to be super delicate with the throttle. I don't have to really be an inconvenience to traffic. I feel like with a little bit of gentle input, I can comfortably gain speed without being a nuisance to anyone else on the road. So a very capable hybrid system, and when you use the 1.6 litre engine and the 6-speed gearbox, you experience an interesting progression of power. So right off of the line, you get the electric torque because that's what hybrids and electric motors are good for. But then just as that steam runs out, the engine will ignite and you'll get that surge of turbocharged torque to then take you up all the way to the red line. It's not all perfect though. 2 downsides. Even though just commuting like I am right now, the brake pedal has a nice firm feel to it. I have noticed that if I stop-go traffic like I'm in right now, in pure EV mode, letting off of the brake a little bit, it lunges forward maybe a bit too aggressively. So a little work needs to be done in that department. And finally, you don't have a dedicated EV button like you would in some Honda or Toyota hybrids, and that's something I personally like to see. But given how effective this vehicle is just in its pure EV mode, being gentle with the throttle or planning ahead a little bit more, it almost negates the need for that specific function. You do have quite a few different driving modes with the Tucson. For drive, you have Eco, Sport, and Smart. Then when you hit the button to go into terrain, it offers you snow, mud, and sand. And it is an all-wheel drive system that has power sent from the engine and the electric motor, as opposed to Toyota, where for many of their all-wheel drive systems, it's just the electric motor fitted onto the rear axle that kind of acts independently from the front. Other aspects of driving, honestly, this vehicle is pretty damn good. To put it up against maybe its two most commonly referred to rivals, the Toyota RAV4 and the Mazda CX-5, this has some of the driving engagement of a CX-5, but where I think Hyundai is missing the mark slightly is the suspension sophistication. So over a bump in this, you get a little crash, a little bit of a dive, but if that was taken in the CX-5, you would get more of that rebound. They're both equally as involving, I'd say, but the Mazda just has the edge in refinement, but this is much more dynamic, nowhere near as soft as a RAV4. So that's something that comfortably fits in the middle of a compact crossover that's more interesting to drive, the CX-5, and one that's just nothing wrong with it, but very much middling, the RAV4. Other things to talk about for driving: steering's good, visibility's fantastic, and the highway refinement in this Hyundai is top notch. It's obvious they put a lot of refinement into this vehicle to try and improve its highway quietness and just overall isolation from the road. I really am blown away so far with my driving experience in this Tucson Hybrid. Let's talk briefly about design before I go into the interior of the new Tucson, because it's obvious that this new Tucson is a radical departure from the vehicle that came before it, and it has a lot of road presence without being overly aggressive. But it's interesting that on the outside, this Hyundai is very angular, a lot of sharp creases in the sheet metal, but then when you come to the interior, it's a lot of flowing lines, curvy even. And to have such a distinction between the exterior design and the interior design being so radically opposed to each other, I think they complement each other so very well. So let's get into the interior. Let's talk about the layout first, then we'll get to some of the goodies that's in this top spec hybrid. So layout, pretty good. I'm 6'4", good amount of under leg support, plenty of space that I could push my knees into. Everything in the center display cascades down like a waterfall, and everything that you use for the climate control and interacting with this 10.25-inch screen is touch capacitive. I am a little annoyed that there is no volume knob, but honestly, this touch system works so well, it could be forgiven for a lot of people. But there is a lot of piano black plastic, so you constantly have to clean it. It's always going to look dusty, and I can see quite a few scratches down on this horizontal portion already. So I personally really like the look and the layout of this cabin pertaining to all of these features. So I'm not bothered enough by the touch sensitive or the constant need to clean it for me to be turned away from this Tucson. One thing that does annoy me with the interior though is they have the glossy black buttons on the steering wheel. Now let's talk about the screens, because in the hybrid model as standard you get the 10.25-inch digital instrument cluster that then when you go into the higher spec version of this vehicle, you have that exact same screen as a touchscreen for your infotainment. The standard hybrid model will have a little bit of a different layout with an 8-inch screen, and I have seen that in person. You do notice it's lacking quality over the 10.25-inch screen. You can see quite a lot of pixel edging, and interestingly with that smaller screen you have wireless phone connectivity, so wireless Apple CarPlay, but on the bigger screen it has to be wired. interesting distinction there. But there are quite a few features with the 10.25 inch screen that make this screen stand out. It's incredibly fast, very responsive, and it features the sounds of nature, which is a comical thing that Hyundai is adding into all of their new vehicles in their top trim models. I personally find it very funny that Hyundai spent money, put people to work in creating this system, because do we need it? Do we need these sounds? Like, what's the point? But talking about the graphics, they are as good as a video game or any top tier movie. Like, the screens are so sharp, black levels are good. To speak on the materials, the leather certainly isn't the richest you could find even in this class. I do like how we have this fabric insert across the door cards, and over the dash there's a couple of hard plastics, kind of where you'd expect them. Nothing out of the ordinary, nothing offensive. And when it comes to the second row of seating, if you're 6'4" like me, you would be very happy sitting in the back of this Tucson. Plenty of foot and knee room, good amount of headroom, even though the full-size sunroof is cutting into that height a little bit. You can recline the seats slightly, doesn't seem any way to slide them forwards and backwards, but they do fold pretty flat. I want to quickly mention that when you go from the 2.5 litre version into the hybrid, you will lose your spare wheel. In this, you have the tire inflation kit underneath the false floor. So to conclude my thoughts on this Tucson Hybrid, as I said at the top, I think this is soon going to receive a multitude of accolades and awards. This Hyundai Tucson, I really do think, now has the ability to be labeled one of, if not the absolute best vehicle in this class. I mean, if you want a hybrid compact crossover, it's going to be an even more competitive vehicle, and I do highly recommend anybody that's shopping for a new compact crossover or any vehicle that has a hybrid variant that you should really test out the hybrid version, as I think it is going to provide some level of driving interest. So outside of some of the small complaints like the ride quality and maybe the textures used in the cabin of the new 2022 Tucson, I don't think I really have any further complaints than that. It's not flawless, but it is very, very close. So that wraps up all of my thoughts towards the Hyundai Tucson Hybrid. Thank you very much for taking the time to watching this video. Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all of those other great things. Really helps this channel out a lot. Hope to see you again here soon.